And here we are. Happy Tuesday. I'm so excited. I love Tuesday. I love being here with all of you. And we have somebody pretty daggone fabulous with us today. And I think it will be an unbelievable session for you to learn a lot about gratitude. And that is something we all should have coming off of the crazy pandemic and finally starting to get back to something close to a real life. So today I have a very special guest I'm excited to introduce you to, and that is none other than the one and only Linda Rozak Burton. So Linda, if you could take a minute, we would love to welcome you. And can you please take a second to just tell everybody a little bit about yourself? That would be perfect.
Well, Leanne, I can't thank you enough for inviting me. I'm so excited that I found you and your group and this fabulous group of members that it's a thrill. I've been thinking about it all holiday weekend, and I'm really excited. You know, my one of my strengths is relationships. And so I have girlfriends, shout out for girlfriends, right? And it's just been really good to connect with people, even in this virtual world. I've gone through the pandemic really being able to stay in touch. And so that brought me a lot of joy and stability and a sense of normalness, even though we couldn't sit across from each other and in real time. But it's just the way we try to make this work for us and figure out what the new normal is going to look like.
Absolutely. And I think you just got about 750 more friends. So there you go.
Yeah, love it. Love it.
So you are an expert in gratitude. You're actually an author, an instructor, a coach, like all these different aspects. Can you take a second? First of all, I'm fascinated to know how you became interested in that topic. It's something we should all be interested in, but how you became interested and then how you progressed to the point where you're an author and an expert on the topic.
Yeah. Oh, I'd love to share that. I'm an executive coach, and my methodologies are based on positive psychology and gratitude. And then what followed there was my research in the neuroscience. And so when you think about gratitude, it has been around before we walked on the earth. Yeah, Cicero, Roman philosopher, called it the virtue of all virtues. And certainly our spiritual leaders have known about the importance of gratitude. So it's been with us. We learned to say thank you probably as right after we learned to say mommy and daddy. But we haven't really been able to understand what it is. And so as I started to bring the gratitude research into my coaching practice, I began to practice gratitude, never thinking that I was not a grateful person, but I really wasn't putting the time and the effort to really begin to acknowledge what I had and journal about it, and kind of create a work and a home environment where I was reminded of the things that I could easily take for granted. And what happened is what we now know from the neuroscience, that when we are practicing a sustainable practice of gratitude, cultivating a practice of gratitude, that we begin to change the neural pathways in our brain. And my aha moment really came when I lost my younger sister at 41 to breast cancer. I continued to journal to her, really all from the grief. It was really quite addicting. And what I realized that after I had been really personally practicing gratitude, I saw that shift happen to me. Of course, I knew I was fortunate to have her in my life for the time I did, but that alone wasn't enough to help me really deal with the grief. And it really just, my parents were just never the same. My mother died after that. We moved my father up here. He passed away. So it was really something that gave me a way of healing. And that's where I kind of came up with the title Gratitude Heals. So I learned it, practiced it, and now I teach it. I bring it to individuals and companies that are really looking now at gratitude as a way of helping support mental fitness or mental health because of all that we've been through.
So that, first of all, I'm sorry for your loss. That is way more than anybody She had to go through. That's a lot. And I'm very sorry to hear that you went through all that. Now, you mentioned that you were doing gratitude practices. So can you elaborate on specifically what those things are that help you go from being in a bad place? What are the things that people can do as a practice?
Well, let me give you the most recognized definition of gratitude, which is an affirmation of goodness and a recognition of goodness outside of ourselves. So when we practice, I think of it in three ways: that we are reflective, expressive, or responsive. So reflecting can be nothing more than sitting outside for 2 minutes, walking with, through nature. They call that the awe walk. Just reflecting on what you are seeing that's good outside of yourself, appreciating what your eyes are experiencing, what you're hearing, what you're smelling. And expressive is exactly that. It's either in written word or it's verbal. It can be one-on-one. It could be to a group. Like I could express gratitude to you in front of a whole group, right? Or there might be some people that would prefer to just have it one-on-one. And then responsive, I don't think we give enough attention to that, because we often get not defensive, but the imposter syndrome comes up. If someone says, thank you so much for what you did for me, what we often hear is, oh, I'm just doing my job, or don't worry, no worries, right? However, what my homework is, when we don't feel comfortable receiving that expression, to turn it around and identify, what does that say about the individual? What does it say about how they care for you, how they pay attention to what your needs are? So there's so much more to that. We certainly know that from the very early research in positive psychology, that 3 good things was the first intervention, gratitude intervention. And that has proven to be one of the most powerful ways of practicing. 3 good things, 3 good people that you are grateful for, and why. But not just because they're a good person. Why is it meaningful that you have these things or these people in your life? How have you benefited? And maybe what sacrifices that have they given on your behalf that really allows us to go deep into an expression or a reflection, and really be able to change the neurochemicals in our brains and in our wiring.
That's amazing. And speaking of changing all that, you've also studied quite a bit the short-term and long-term impact of doing all this. Can you discuss with us a little bit about what you've seen in your research and your work?
Yeah. Well, short term, right now, it's the best thing that we have for us, because when you think of the negative messages that we hear every day, and it's amplified because of the pandemic. If we try to practice gratitude, even in small increments, what we're able to do is create some space between that fight, flight, fear, when we hear this negative news, negative messages, to being able to tap into our parasympathetic nervous system, to slow our heart rate, to lower our blood pressure. So short term, we are able to use it as a way of managing stress, coping with anxiety, and really feel that sense of overwhelm is something that we can begin to minimize, not do away with it completely, because we have this built-in negativity bias, right? It's kept us alive as a civilization. So we're always going to go to the threat way of thinking, and gratitude helps us make that shift.
So you said like 5 brilliant things all wrapped into that answer. You know that, don't you? It's funny because sometimes in my own little immature, small way of doing things, when I get really frustrated, I'll go, okay, great. What's good about this situation? You know what I mean? And I like just that can open up your mind to be able to find a solution. I feel like when I'm stuck, like if I'm doing something with work and I hit a roadblock, I'm like, okay. So
right.
That's kind of my little itty bitty non-research way of applying what you're saying.
No, it's perfect. It's perfect, right? It's a gift or an opportunity of some way. I just have to figure out what it is.
And you brought up something really interesting too. You were talking about all the stuff we're bombarded with. And, personally, there's nothing great that anyone heard about the pandemic, except for the fact that, it going away would be great. And the news I found to be extraordinarily toxic during all of
Yes.
this. And I just
Yes.
stopped watching it. If anything really big happens, someone will tell me. But one of the things that I've noticed from having some friends in the medical field is that they were really impacted. And I believe that you do some of this with nurses. Is that correct?
Yes, I do a lot of work with nurses, with teams, with nurse leaders, really being able to create that space and begin to recognize that what they're feeling, the sense of overwhelm, they were already burned out to begin with. They were already dealing with depression and anxiety. And so it's been a tool for them to really use during this time to help them and each other recognize that in fact they do have each other, and that in and of itself is something that they find part of their gratitude practice as well. So an amazing profession. I have nothing but admiration for nurses, and yeah, we need to express as much appreciation for them and for them to practice it themselves so they have some healing that they can deal with coming through the pandemic.
I've always respected nurses so much, and before the pandemic, and not only what they give, but the shifts that they have to put in. Like a lot of them work these crazy 12-hour shifts, and it was
Right.
brutal. And then you throw a pandemic in the middle of it.
Mm.
I can't even imagine the stress level of what that's been able to do. So you were
Right.
able to see some changes and some things shift for them.
Yeah, definitely. That it created a moment where it was just time for themselves,
Mm.
right? They could isolate themselves in a way where isolate, I guess that's a good term during the pandemic, but they could just kind of step away from the intensity of what they were dealing with and do something good for themselves. And that investment in themselves is something that's priceless. And that's part of the whole self-care. One of the long-term benefits of gratitude is that we do take better care of ourselves. We've seen that we have healthier eating habits, we exercise more, we
Mhm.
definitely improve our autoimmune system, we lower our blood pressure, we sleep better. So again, when I talk about cultivating and sustaining a practice, it is something that does allow us to achieve these health and well-being benefits. And there's so many research studies now done around the world that anybody that really wants to dig into this will be amazed at the work that's being done in gratitude.
And we're going to get to in a minute your book too. We'll get back to that. So that's another way to learn. But also, there's different levels of where people are in life. And
Yes.
I have to tell you, like during the pandemic, we did lose a family member and we went through some stuff. But
I'm
overall,
sorry.
thank you. But overall, I look at what we have to be grateful for, and how much worse everything could be, and what people go through. Sometimes you're in a place where your life is pretty good, and then something hits you and you're able to process it and you're able to find some gratitude in it. Sometimes you're kind of in a weak spot, and
Right.
then when you get hit with something, it can really knock you out. And sometimes things are just bad. Like I know some people who went into a very dark place because they were struggling with issues before all this. And I'm not just saying just in the pandemic, but in general. So the question I'm would love to ask you, if that's okay, if someone is in a place, like I know somebody really well who is in a place where in their place, their reality is that everything is awful, and they can't find anything to be grateful for, in though there are things to be grateful for, like where they are mentally and emotionally is so dark right now. If you know somebody like that, because the reason I'm asking you this, other people who are watching this will know someone like that as well. If you know someone who's in that dark a place, what advice or practices can you gently try and get them to take on? Because they're not going to go, hey, here's what's great about this, So what would you tell somebody, or how can you help somebody who's there?
Well, I always start with being where they are. And I have heard this quite a bit through the pandemic. There's just no way I could feel grateful for anything right now. And you know what? That's okay, because this is not something that can be forced. And it is it's respectful to understand where people are at the moment, what they're dealing with. One of the things that we recommend is that they start with a little micro practice.
Okay.
So while you're brushing your teeth, what is one good thing? When you're waiting in line somewhere, waiting for your Starbucks coffee or on hold, what might be, what was one nice thing that someone did for you over the last 24 hours?
Hmm.
And because gratitude also allows us to recognize the other positive emotions, right? So negative emotions are very contagious because of how the brain receives negative emotions. They stay with us longer.
Oh, that's interesting. Okay.
Yeah, positive emotions are contagious as well, but they're very short-lived. So if we saw a beautiful sunrise this morning, that awe, maybe 90 seconds. And that positive emotion is that fleeting. So being able to start small, and to also remind anybody that's really struggling that this is not to deny that the negative events have occurred. It does promote healing by recognizing that there's some small amount of goodness that we can identify, and not to put ourselves, it's a non-judgment zone. We
Yeah.
can't judge ourselves by saying, well, I'm not good at this, or how can I, no judgment. But another thing to do is to maybe put a visual, or if it's a friend, maybe send them a picture
Hmm.
that will give them a good memory.
Oh, that's a great idea.
Right? And so every time they look at it, they're reminded of the friendship that you have, or what you did when you had that picture taken. And again, that's just another way of creating that space between the negativity, the depression, the anxiety that we're feeling, to recognizing something good, someone good in our lives. And then to just look at, how do you incorporate that maybe 3 days out of the week? Or so the research tells us that we don't have to journal every day. In fact, if we do and it becomes a chore, we don't achieve any of these benefits.
Yeah.
But if we do them at a time that works for us with our daily schedule, we're able to really then begin to look forward to it. It becomes a habit. It's a ritual, if you will, that we feel really good being able to do it, knowing that it's really going to benefit us in so many ways. And in organizations, Leanne, it's the same thing. We're wired to solve problems, and we're pretty good at that. But it does take an effort to shift into recognizing we got a lot going on here. That's great. The problems will always be there.
At least, look, if we're here to experience the problems, that puts us a step ahead of a lot of people right there. It's funny what you said, because about positive things being so fleeting and negative staying. That's an incredible statement, but it's so true. Like, if you get up in the morning and it starts off great, you're happy. But if you get up in the morning and something goes wrong, then you're like, oh, it's going to be one of those days.
Oh, yeah.
Why is that?
Well, that's the stickiness to something negative. I mean, how many times do you hear people walk into the office and, don't even take your coat off, it's going to be a terrible day. Well, so here's a little bit of the neuroscience that I just find fascinating. If we feel unappreciated, or that our contributions don't matter, or that we're not valued, it activates the pain centers of our brain. And it's as powerful as if we had a physical blow to our head. So we begin to ruminate about what that negative experience was, and we just keep going and going and going. So to cut that short, to disrupt it or interrupt it takes practice. I think you were talking earlier. So how do I look at the opportunity? If something's not working right, how can I stand back and look at what is good, or what good could come from this, so that we don't get into that rumination, don't get stuck in that negative downward spiral.
You know, it's interesting. My mother-in-law is a brilliant woman, and she said to me very young, she said, when I was very young, she said to me, everything happens for a reason. And she said, when something happens, try to find a way to be grateful for it. And if you can't find it right away, it's coming down the road. So it kind of gives you a little perspective because then you're looking for something, but there is always something. And I love how you're talking about that. Now, one of the things that there are two things that you are doing that, well, everything you're doing is fascinating, but there are two things I really wanted to talk about while I've still got you here. One of them is that you do webinars. Can you talk a little bit about the gratitude webinars that you're doing and what they are and how that works?
Right. Well, there's several parts to it. What we start with actually what it is,
Mhm.
what it is and why it's important. And then we go into the health and well-being benefits that are achieved. Depending on the interest of the participants, we could go into the research or we keep it just in very general terms. We take a look at the emotional, the physical, the mental, the whole psychological approach. And then we can move into what does gratitude mean as a leadership essential? How do leaders become able to incorporate gratitude into their leadership style and into the culture of their organization? And then we talk about how do we build and broaden that so that it's not one department in an organization, but the organization overall really as a value practices gratitude to achieve whatever the metrics are that they're trying to achieve, whether it's sales, whether it's patient satisfaction, whether it's a certain top and bottom line that they're trying to reach. All of that is achievable with the right amount of gratitude in the culture.
So you're doing that on a corporate and team level as a coach, more as an executive coach, correct?
Yes,
Have
yes.
you ever thought about doing it for individuals? Like, have you ever thought about a format where, just someone like me and some other people who are like, hey, I want to learn more about that. Do you ever consider doing anything like that?
I have considered that. I would love to get a small group together. I have a workbook that we could work through.
Nice.
And the group would have to, at the very beginning, would have to respect what each other is bringing to the group. But it can be a very rewarding experience. Again, my love for relationships is that we really do tap into who we are as humans.
Mm.
So I would love to do that. Anybody that wants to do that, sign up. Let me know.
I was just going to say, you heard it here. Put it in the comments.
You heard it here first.
You heard it here first, hot off the press. Some good, positive news. They can comment, and you're also in the group, so they can reach out to you in the.
Yes, that's right.
Great. Now let's get to the awesome thing as well, which is the fact that you're an author. And I did ask you to bring a copy of your book. So if you would do a little quick show and tell, we'd love to see your book. Dun, dun, dun. And if you could take a second, first of all, I will say this because I know you won't because you're very sweet, but her book is available on Amazon for yours today. You can go to Amazon and order it. And can you tell us a little bit about conceptually, what you wanted to achieve with the book and what you think the book sends out in terms of helping people?
Right. Well, the term gratitude heals came to me, as I told you, as I was kind of dealing with my grief. And so I wanted to put together something where people could have just a basic understanding of positive psychology, of the research in gratitude and the neuroscience.
Mm.
So that's at the beginning of the book. It is a part book, part journal, part workbook. So there are prompts on every other page that talks about how to, sometimes we stare at the journal pages, they're blank, we don't know what. So there are prompts throughout the journal to help us get it started. And there are many, many resources in the back. There's also a gratitude letter template. And there is that to me is probably the most beneficial way to start a gratitude practice. Think of somebody who's been very, very important in your life and write them a letter of gratitude. Do not mail it. Do not mail it. Do not email it. Call them up and read it to them, or go somewhere for a dinner, a cup of coffee, whatever, if you have to be 6 feet apart still, and read it to them, because that is that not only makes you realize how important and meaningful this person is in your life, but they realize how important and meaningful they've been in your life. Now, I wrote that letter to my sister the night she passed. So my advice is don't wait. Write that letter, call that person up, schedule a time, read it to them. And if they have passed, read it to someone that knows you well or knew the individual very well. It's still not something that you want to put in the mail. That the true impact is that you read it out loud.
That's amazing. I could
Yeah.
see where that would really, not only do so much for you, whoever writes the letter, but how could it not impact the recipient
Yeah.
of it?
Right.
It's
Right.
remarkable.
And right, because we don't think that it means that much to that person that we're writing about, but it could be life changing for a lot of people. In fact, I was doing a program for women's health, and there was a participant that came up to me afterwards, and she said, I had this best friend when I was in school, and we just kind of lost our way with each other. She said, I'm going to sit down and write that person a letter of gratitude and give her a call. So it made a connection that hadn't existed for years.
That's
Really, really important.
Yeah, and it's also
Right.
a great thing if you do have people who are, you know, older or maybe not in good
Yep.
health, because one of the things that's amazing that I'm grateful for is completion. If you get completion with someone before they pass away,
Yeah.
it's a gift
Right.
to both people. It really is.
Oh, yeah.
You're
Yeah.
remarkable. I'm so excited. Get her book. It's awesome. Go get her book, you guys. But one of the things I warned you, I was like, we start talking and then boom, we blink and like a half hour's over so fast.
Right. We're almost out of time.
I know. But I really love that you've made this a focus, and I really am so grateful that you're here. Grateful that you would take the time. And just one of the things that's a gift in this group is women like you who are willing to give and uplift and empower and inspire other women. And you come in here for free. We do everything for free for each other in here, but I love that you do that. So thank you very much for being here and for giving those great words. I'm going to do both of those things that you said. I'm going to write a letter. I know exactly to who I'm going to write a letter to.
Good. Good.
And those practices, there's someone I want to talk to about maybe doing what you called it micro practices, right?
Micro practice. Yeah. Right.
Fantastic.
Well, and my gratitude to you, Leanne, for pulling together this fabulous community of people from very international is what I understand.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's I'm very appreciative of you giving your time and energy to this, and I look forward to participating in all your future programs.
We love having you here. So you have heard it first from the Queen of Gratitude herself. And what we'll do is below this, we could post a link maybe to Amazon for your book. So if someone's interested in the book,
Thank you.
I would love to do that. So if you'll sneak me that link, I'm going to post that up there. And of course, they can contact you through the group. And also,
Yes.
speaking of international, we have a poet from the UK next Tuesday. And the backstory of what she went through and how she became a poet will absolutely make you very grateful for so many things in life. So we can take what Linda has taught us today and practice it all week, and also be in a different place where we listen to the speaker next Tuesday. So Linda, thank you again. You are fabulous, and I hope you all got something out of this. Please leave any comments, questions, or if you're interested in doing one of those little webinars, that would be really cool. I'd love to do it.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Leanne.
Thank you. And everybody have a fantastic week. We'll see you next Tuesday. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye.